Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to Slade's narration of the web series The Human from a Dungeon. If you are new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 53 Hoth, Adventurer Level NA, Bone Fey King, Deep Wild Forest. I watched with anticipation as the dust from our attacks began to clear. A convenient gust of wind helped speed things along, and soon Basanoth and I were able to meet each other's eyes. Spears of bone and blood impaled the ground around us. We simultaneously slouched as we realized that we had once again remained unscathed by each other's attacks. "Bah!" Basanoth said, waving a hand dismissively. "I'm willing to call it a draw if you are. We can drain each other's magic and come no closer to a final decision." "You're most likely correct," I admitted. "Fine, a draw it is. Again. I suppose we'll both take part in the hearing?" "Thank the High Ones!" a shrill voice shouted from beneath the toppled tree. "A little help, please!" Basanoth and I shared a look of exasperation. The both of us had warned the King of Bone Fairies against spectating our battle. I walked over to the tree and lifted it, allowing Hull to escape its crushing embrace. It wasted no time taking to the air and hovered a few inches from my face. "Why must your battles be so destructive?" Hull demanded, gesturing to the new clearing that had formed within the forest. "Can't you play stone, leather, dagger instead?" "Even if we did, we would always select the same option," I explained. "Consider this a demonstration of our frustration, venting, as it were." "Surely there are less destructive ways to vent your frustrations built up from your impotent rivalry." "Perhaps I'll obtain a coin from a mortal, and you can use that instead." "We've tried games of chance, Hull," Basanoth said. "Dice will land cocked and coins will land upon their sides. The High Ones have decided that we are to be equally matched, and they seem to take some sadistic satisfaction in forcing the impossible to happen and making certain that we remain that way." "The forest will heal, Hull, and I've heard enough chatter," I interrupted. "Let us be off, Basanoth. I detest tardiness and wish to set an example for our peers." "Right, let's go. I wish to see the mortals that made an Archfey," Hull grinned. "No. You lost your fight against Ylf," Basanoth pointed out. "You do not have the right to attend the hearing." "I'm not going to attend. I'm just going to watch. I heard that one of the mortals is strange. Neither elf, nor orc, nor dwarf, nor, any other races. It's got flat ears. As if we want to listen to you prattle on for an entire journey. Travel separately if you must watch the hearing." "I don't want to travel alone. Come on, I'll be quiet, please." "Be quiet?" I asked, my jawbone contorting to form a grin. "Is such a feat even possible for a tooth fairy?" "How dare you!" Hull demanded, puffing up in anger. "I expect such slurs from Bloodfey, even other fairies, but you... I'll have you know that I collect much more than just teeth. Finger bones, feet bones, even the little bones in the ears." "Oh," my grin widened. "And exactly how many of these bones do you currently have in your collection?" Hull's eyes narrowed at me, and Basanoth began to laugh. "It is common knowledge that the King of Bone Fairies prefers bargaining to violence, and teeth are the only bones that mortals are somewhat willing to part with, especially the temporary teeth of the young." I began to walk, and Hull hurried after me indignantly, muttering obscenities under his breath. Basanoth and I made our way towards the Tree of Life as Hull began ranting about the unfairness of my question. Whenever the raving began to die down, one of us would laugh, and it would cause it to begin anew. The distance was vast, though, and eventually Hull forgot about my insult. "So, why aren't the two of you evenly matched to begin with?" Hull asked. "It seems like a fairly arbitrary thing for the High Ones to desire, let alone enforce." "It is because I am the embodiment of life, and Hoth is the embodiment of death," Basanoth explained. "We are destined to rage against each other, yet neither can claim victory over the other. Not while we actually exist, at any rate." "That doesn't make sense. If a living being became immortal, they'd be immune to death, right? So life would continue to exist, wouldn't it?" "Wrong," I answered with a chattering chuckle. "There is no such thing as true immortality amongst the living. Even if there were, the very act of becoming immortal wrenches them from the chains of life. And one cannot call such a being living. Even if that weren't the case, death would still have the last laugh at their expense. The very world upon which we tread will one day die, and where will they be then? They will be left desperately praying for death to whomever will listen, Basnath said. Mortals are such fleeting things, and their longing for immortality only serves to prove this. If they were allowed to mature for a few thousand years, they would realize the folly of such desires. Do you think we'll want to die one day? Because of this conversation, I really do. I clicked my teeth in laughter. No, come on. Seriously, though. We're immortal, aren't we? No, we aren't, I answered. We are able to perish. Well, it is true that the cycle of fairness allows us to retake physical form. If that happens, we lose who we are in the process. Death is not simply a loss of one's body. It is a loss of being. The King of Bone Fairies contemplated silently while the King of Blood Fae studied me with pursed lips as we walked. I met their gaze and tilted my skull in a silent query. Are you going to get dressed? Basnath asked. You look like a naked lich. I looked down and realized I had not yet applied flesh to my form. With a sigh, I began the process of covering my wonderful skeleton with mediocre and completely cosmetic meat. Nearly all beings find my true physical appearance threatening or otherwise disturbing. Long ago, a mortal pointed out to me that this must make me lonely. I wholeheartedly agreed and replied that was the point. I prefer solitude. Once the bloodless tissue had bonded and tightened to my precious bones, I looked back at Basnath. Is this adequate? I asked. Going for the androgynous look, Basnath replied, pointing at my chest. I looked down again and noticed that it looked as if I had a singular feminine breast. I sighed again, summoning a small bone spear, then stabbing the inflated skin. It hissed as the air left it and reformed in a more masculine manner. That looks good, Hal said. Still needs actual clothes, though. It's never enough for you fleshy ones, I complained. First you cover your bones with meat, then you cover your meat with cloth, and sometimes you even cover the cloth with metal. Where does it end? At the armor, Basnath laughed. I scoffed as I donned my coverings. The cloth was a simple tunic and pants made of various plants suited for the purpose, and the armor was similar in shape to Basnath's, but made of bone instead of indurated blood. Once I was fully dressed, I made an exaggerated gesture to my outfit. Both of the other kings nodded their approval, and we continued on our trek. Before long, we came upon the clearing of life, and to my surprise, we weren't the first to arrive. Algebron and Tartars had managed to find and bring the mortals, and a lot of them were sitting patiently. Yilf was also already seated, casually watching our approach. I detected Timothy's presence, but they were hiding in some foliage at the edge of the clearing. I gestured at the king of the sprites, and Hull took my meaning and joined them. Basnath and I made for our seats, but Algernon stopped us with a raised hand. He nodded at the mortals, 2 orcs and the much-discussed human, and they rose. The human looked exactly like the archfey had described him, but slightly more road-worn. Horth, king of the Bone Fae, and Basnath, king of the Blood Fae, Algernon said, then gestured to the mortals. May I introduce Yuk, Nash, and Nick of Clan Alta? Basnath and I shared a glance, surprised with the fame of the familial name. Clan Alta, huh? Basnath asked. I'm fairly certain that I owe one of your ancestors some comeuppance. A member of Clan Alta, an orc about your size and shape, challenged me to a duel about 50 years back. They used a bit of trickery to secure the win, and as their prize they took my, I suppressed a laugh as I noticed what had given Basnath pause. The king of Bloodfay was staring at the belt of the orc known as Nash, upon which rested a serrated battle axe. I recognized it immediately. My axe, Mathanos finished their sentence. Pray tell, Nash of Clan Alta, how did you come upon ownership of the Bone Biter? The orc's eyes widened as he instinctively reached for the axe. Instead of drawing it, which would have been a fatal mistake, he ran his hand over it. I boy from the Adventurers Guild, he explained. My father owned one that was almost just like it. Basnath and I looked closer at the axe. It was very similar, but contained much more iron than Bonebiter could have. Even though the extra iron makes it a more effective weapon against me, Basinoth would be unable to safely wield it. We exchanged a look. I see, Basinoth laughed. A near-perfect replica. Does your father still have the original? I'll gladly face him again for the chance to regain it. Though, he's likely getting on in years, so perhaps we should do battle of wits instead. My apologies, Nash bowed his head slightly. My father is long dead, and he was buried with the axe. It was his most cherished weapon. I see. You have my condolences. It fills me with bittersweet happiness to know that he enjoyed my axe so much. Basinoth had it made specifically to give them an edge against me, I explained. Then he immediately lost it to your father. That's true. I retrieved the weapon and ran into your father on my way to challenge Horth. I was unaware that your father had been living wild, as he put it, and agreed to face him for the axe. If I had won, I would have gained his blood, but I fell into one of the traps he had set to catch food for the night. As a result, he took the victory and my axe, Basinoth sighed. And to top it off, the smith that crafted it was hit by a falling star before I could ask them to make another. They were reborn, of course, but lost all memory of how to fashion metals. Divine intervention, I nodded. That's what you get for trying to surpass me. The mortal's eyes widened in horror at our little exchange, except for the sorcerer named York. His eyes remained calm and collected, as if he wasn't the least bit surprised to hear anything that was being said. I found this curious, but before I could ask him anything, Basinoth turned to the human. So, Nick, you must be the one that made a couple of new Archfey. Yes, but not on purpose, Nick stammered nervously. How exactly does one make accidentally two Archfey? I asked, bemused. Well, they stopped us in the road because they wanted our names. But since we need our names, I gave them new names, and then they were Archfey. That's quite a lot of power to create a name for a Fey, Basinoth said. However, that isn't enough to make an Archfey. It shouldn't be, at least, I added. Though we're not exactly experts on the matter. Mamuldebrand would know more. Just where is the king of the Archfey? Having a conniption, Tartars said jovially. They'll be joining us shortly. A conniption? What for? A bunch of things, really. First, the fact that we were made into Archfey under mysterious circumstances. Then my name and the fact that I chose it. Finally, some sort of sprite killed his favorite tea tree as a prank. I instinctively glanced towards Timothy, who winced and shrank back further into the foliage. Hull was resting upon the sprite's shoulders and had to fight a branch to remain there. Basinoth let out a heavy sigh. I really like the tea from that tree. Not to worry, Tartar said. They were smart enough to save a cutting of the tree, and we've already got it planted. It'll take a few years to grow up, but we'll still be able to enjoy Mamuldebrand's special brew at some point in the future. I am pleased to hear that, Mamuldebrand said, appearing as if from nowhere. Or rather, my rage is lessened by the news. We did not gather here to discuss my anger, though. Didn't we? Tartar asked with a grin. I thought the whole point of this hearing was to discuss how Archfey were made without your consent. Isn't that one of the things that you were sore about? Mamuldebrand stared at Tartar, obviously trying to make the Archfey's head explode with willpower alone. I found myself becoming a tad impatient at their antics. So I clashed my teeth loudly to snap the king of the Archfey out of it. It glanced at me with an ineffectual annoyance, then cleared its throat. Algebron, please perform the introductions so that we may get started, Mamuldebrand said. We have lots to discuss. End of chapter. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, Jon Creighton, W.R.E, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.